Hey folks, everything new under the sun. You've heard me speak of 7 good years and 7 bad years, and what we're looking at is out of Genesis and chapter 41, and it's about Joseph and the Pharaoh in Egypt, of course, and the dream of Pharaoh, and it speaks of there coming 7 good years and 7 bad years. It says, "Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, and there shall arise after them 7 years of famine, and all after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land." Now it's a judgment on Pharaoh in Egypt, but um, Joseph, sorry, Joseph was wise, and he interpreted the dream through God, and told the Pharaoh, you know what, we need to store up food for these 7 good years, 7 years of plenty, because 7 years of famine are quickly coming down the pipe. And the 7 years of plenteousness that was in the land of Egypt were ended, and the 7 years, where are we here? There we are. And the 7 years of dearth began to come, according as Joseph had said. And the dearth was in all the lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. Why? Because Joseph knew it was coming. The quote unquote the Christian in the country, he knew it was coming. He told the king, the leadership, that it was coming, and the leadership believed him and got prepared and stored up. So, likewise, I think in the last days, there will be 7 good years and 7 bad years, and I think we're living in the 7 good years, relative. So, and this article likens it to 7 good years, 2012 to 2019, and then 2020, kind of kicking off the 7 bad years, which of course kicked off COVID and the trouble that we had then. But is it started yet? I don't think it's quite started. I still think generally in the world there was plenty, other than lockdowns. We were locked down, but there was still plenty of everything. And so I think the bad years, the famine years, have not started yet. Well, take us to today. French President Emmanuel Macron. This is from nowtheendbegins.com. He says some interesting things which I want to read here. So French President Emmanuel Macron warned Wednesday that France faced sacrifices in a new era marked by climate change. He says, if I was going to cast the author says, if I was going to cast an end times movie where I needed someone to perfectly portray the biblical man of sin, I would look no further than the French president Emmanuel Macron. That's what the author said about Macron. Today he got in front of the camera, opened his mouth, and spoke great swelling words. And what did he say? Well, will 2022 be the dark winter that the New World Order has been warning us was coming? This is the author again. Joe Biden thinks so. Emmanuel Macron spoke like he thinks this winter signals the end of abundance. Now that language, that terminology, those words make me again think of the 7 good years and the 7 bad years. He says not just for the French people, but for the global population. Remember, there was a dearth upon all the land, not just Egypt, which we read in Genesis there. At the very least, what an odd thing for Macron to say, and after listening to it a few times, it now comes off much more like a threat than it does a warning. Whatever shall be, I know one thing, my King James Bible is already way ahead of the New World Order. I'm not worried about them catching up anytime soon. Of course, God's Word knows what's coming already. After a summer of drought, massive wildfires, and continuing loss of life in Ukraine, the 44-year-old leader delivered a stark speech at the start of the first cabinet meeting after the country's traditional August holiday break. What did he say? He says, I believe that we are in the process of living through a turning point or great upheaval. Firstly, because we are living through, let me get that. First, because we are living through the end of what seemed like the end of abundance, he said. So, living through the end of abundance. Our system based on freedom in which we have become used to living, sometimes we need to defend it. It can entail making sacrifices, Macron told ministers on Wednesday. Macron had called on French people to accept paying the price of liberty. This is really the line that Biden's taking as well. and really Trudeau, paying the price of liberty during the address. In his speech Wednesday, he also referred to severe drought over the summer in France, which has prompted water restrictions across most country and increased fears about the pace of climate change. Again, excuses instead of returning to God. That's what that is. This overview I'm giving, he says, the end of abundance, the end of insolence, and this is a word I had to look up. Let's take a look here. It's the casual lack of concern. You can't see the screen I'm looking at, but the casual lack of concern, indifference, the end of assumptions. So at that time of living blissfully ignorant, when everything was awesome and everybody just lived their lives and everything was great, that's over. And we've had that for the last 40, 50, 60, even 70 years, generally speaking, where there was just a lack of concern about anything. Everything was just awesome. Everything was good. And I think in large part we were living under the blessing of God from the Christian heritage that we have in our countries, but that is over. We're getting to the end point here. The blessing and the hand of God is lifting from Western nations as we continue to move away from God and reject Him indeed. And we go to this climate change thing and we try and solve issues. We try to be our own gods. God's not going to help us anymore. It's ultimately a tipping point that we are going through that can lead our citizens to feel a lot of an anxiety, Macron continued. Faced with this, we have duties, the first of which is to speak frankly and very clearly without doom mongering, he said. So he recognizes this is a very end of days thing, last days kind of terminology and comments. Sacrifices we're going to face, and the time of abundance is over. We're heading into a time of great upheaval, and to me that speaks exactly like the 7 good years, 7 bad years. So I think he's marking the tipping point. And what would the world leaders say? He would say glowing words like that to rally the citizenry, to get them fired up as if for a world war or some great battle that they need to rally together for, and to take some sacrifices for, and to take some troubles and tribulations for, if you will, in the name of climate change, in the name of preserving world democracy and peace and all these big things that they are trying to preserve. So 7 good years, 7 bad years. I've said it before. I think that's exactly what we're coming up against here. And of course, I've got my regular timeline of the return of the Lord, and there it is there. And I think we're heading into this last 7-year period. The 7 good years is done. That really ended. It is ending rather. We haven't seen the worst of it yet. Things are still aplenty right now, although harvests will be getting affected as we head into next year. It's this year's harvest with the nitrogen, lack of nitrogen, fertilizers, etc. The fall harvest is going to be limited, and going into next year with fertilizer limitations, world wars, other things happening, chip shortages, supply chain issues, they're all exacerbated. And going into next year, I think we're really going to start feeling the pinch. And many large corporations are laying off a lot of workers, getting ready for what many believe is going to be far worse than a recession. Indeed, more akin to a depression. And it's going to be an incredible time. So we're getting very close. I don't know exactly when the 7 years starts, but I suggest to you that, boy, I think we're getting close. And I think many would agree that these last couple of years has shown us that we are heading towards something big. Thanks for watching, folks. I'll leave it there. We'll see you in the next video.